Hello, everyone. If you don't know me, my name is Dr. Tina Srivastav, and I am the Secretary of Inkosi. I'm honored to welcome you all here today for our joint leadership session. I would like to really thank each of you for your service to Inkosi. I'd like to welcome fellow members of the Board of Directors, the Corporate Advisory Board, the Academic Council, the IOB, Tech Ops, Working Group chairs, and members of our chapter leadership and the CAG. All of you play very important roles in Inkosi, and what we have crafted for you this morning is a presentation that I hope enables each of you in your roles. We've tried to provide as much information as we can to get across the necessary statistics, background information, and updates on our various initiatives. I hope you find it valuable, and in future years, if there's something in particular you'd like to hear about, please let me know and we'll make sure to include it. During today's session, we will hear from our president. We will also get key statistics on our membership from Christine. We'll have our Director of Strategic Integration who will brief you on our strategic objectives. We also have a new session that we don't usually have at our leadership plenary, which is Chapter Governance and Financial Model Update. This is a task team that has been working very, very hard and long hours with the input, and the impetus came from our chapter leaders and Inkosi members around the world. So the person who's been leading this group is Carrie Lunny, who is our director of the Asia-Oceania sector and has been working with a great team and has a very important update to share with each of you to then share back to your constituents. We'll hear from Bill Chown about the IT report. We'll hear about technical operations, a lot of great things that are happening there, new products as well. We'll have our forever interesting certification brief. Courtney has held us to high standards in the past, so we'll keep you to that. And then, of course, we'll talk about outreach and alliances. Ian Gibson has put together a presentation that really focuses on what are these strategic alliances all about, what can you do, as well as indicating specifically which alliances we already have and which ones we've prioritized for the future. So hopefully this is useful information to you. And then we'll wrap up with a short update from the CAB and Academic Council, and then we'll allow you to adjourn to your individual meetings. Thank you so much, and without further ado, I will welcome our president, Alan Harding.
Great, thanks, Tina. Morning, everyone. For those of you who had a late night, I hope you'll manage to stay awake and stay with it. And for those of you, like me, suffering a bit from jet lag, because so many of us have traveled, hopefully what we've put together for you will be interesting enough and keep your attention. It's a great privilege to be president of Inkosi. We've got a lot we all do, and as a selection of leaders from across Inkosi, it's a great opportunity to give you an update and a reminder of what's important to us, to make sure you've got information to hand in doing the various things we're all up to. What I've got is a short presentation, probably to remind those familiar with the organization of some key points, but also to introduce a couple of highlights, just reminding us how we're looking to drive things forward on behalf of System Engineering Society and of course, Inkosi. So to that, these days I start pretty much every presentation with a reminder of our Inkosi Vision and our Inkosi mission. We did update it a little over a year ago, and I think it's a really good representation of who we are and what we're trying to do. It's bold, it's self-consciously altruistic, it's not just for us, it's looking to contribute to a better world. And of course, it's got the backbone of enabling, promoting, and advancing both systems engineering and the more inclusive systems approaches. And obviously, as Inkosi leaders, you're aware of the various overlapping communities that are so important to us. And I think this this gives a great essence of who we are and what we're trying to do. In terms of who we are, again, just a reminder, I think each society is defined by the type of people and what we think is good, what we strive for and the like. And we express that through our Inkosi Values and Principles. The web links here, it's on our Inkosi page. They're reasonably common parlance, but they highlight how we seek to be. And interestingly, we'll hear about strategic alliances later in this session. Understanding the type of organisation we are helps us understand the sorts of organisation we would partner with to do things, because you have to be working with people with common purpose and consistent enough ways of doing things. The only thing I'll draw out of here in terms of values and principles is volunteers and volunteerism. We are a volunteer-led organisation. Most of what we do is done by volunteers, supported by our professional staff working closely together, and that is at the essence of how Inkosi operates. Clearly, as we evolve and hopefully continue to grow, we keep in mind how to ensure that volunteer roles are sustainable and attractive and rewarding, and make sure that we've got the right professional support with the boundary in the right place so we're all working together. And naturally, that's something that evolves, but certainly I think they are strong examples of the type of people and the type of organisation we are all together. So if you like, volunteers, staff, and all our various partners that we work with. Those of you that have seen me do any presentations over the last 18 months know that I always highlight the Encode ZSC Vision. This important piece of work that goes back, was published in 2014, really is a significant contribution from us to the community about where we see systems engineering needing to go, the imperatives of how to get there, and the challenges involved. As it says here, it's a major influence to strategy and planning within Inkosi, whether that's at board level or within technical operations, academic matters, pretty much all of the areas. It's an important consideration when planning what's important. Is it the only thing we use? No, but is it a touchstone for what we do and why we're doing something? Absolutely. So for those of you familiar with it, thank you for being familiar. For those who haven't had a look recently, again, it's up on the Inkosi site. It's a little bit of a large download, but it's freely available to everyone because it's about informing the conversation and taking things forward. Not on the slide, but just noticing Paul Schrijnmakers over there, it just reminds me, very recently our Netherlands chapter has just produced their own version of this, so taking the vision and saying, what does it mean to us in our national context going forwards? And I think that's a superb example of using this as a conversation starter to develop the thinking of what's relevant to us. Haven't had a chance to look in detail, but I'm sure that is the sort of way that we can help provide leadership into the wider communities. In terms of evolving Inkosi, again, well briefed, we have a set of strategic objectives, also known as our 5-year objectives, which is where the board has tried to focus on important areas to evolve our organisation on a way towards achieving our mission and vision. When you hear from specific directors and leaders within Inkosi, you'll get references to this, and there's other information available. But as you see, they cut across a number of important areas, but don't include everything we do, because obviously that's where you have your annual operating plan and all the other things. But what we wanted to do was say, well, okay, if we drive forward on competency, on alliances, on education, and the others, that will be taking us towards where we need to go. So it's part of how we're trying to express that forward drive of where we're going. In terms of where we're going, and something that I've always talked a lot about, is Inkosi as a global organisation. And I think if you like, the tagline of think globally, coordinate regionally, especially with our sectors in mind, and act locally, is a good summary of how we are. We are a system of systems. We've got all of these key working parts, and when Tina was doing the introduction, talking about our chapters, our working groups, our sectors, our corporate advisory board members and their employees, faculty and students and the like. We've got parts of Inkosi all striving to drive things forward and deliver value to their stakeholders, and it all fits together, or should in a perfect world, fit together into a harmonious organisation. And I guess there's the rub. We all work hard, we do our best to get things smooth, but again, as still a relatively young organisation, one that is largely volunteer, we continue to work to try and make the organisation better. And I know pretty much all of these constituencies are involved in various aspects of delivering on our commitments today and moving forward. And on that moving forward, this is some of, if you like, the fresh content, because most of that is reminding you of what you already know. In terms of moving forward as leaders within Inkosi, clearly bullet one is about continuing to do the great stuff we're all involved in and we enjoy doing. Looking at how we evolve as a society. As Tina's mentioned, you'll have a short update on the work on chapter governance and Inkosi financial model. We're also within that, the financial model is helping us do what we can to evolve our financial models so that they work at both the local and the all-up Inkosi level. It's vital for us to ensure that the value we offer to the various stakeholder communities within Inkosi and outside makes sense, and also that we can communicate it well. We often kick ourselves around thinking, how do we describe our value proposition? At one level, it's really simple. At others, we I think, strive to have good descriptions so that we can put the case succinctly to people. So, for instance, the C-suite, the CEOs and the like, have we got a really clear encapsulation for them? Not readily to hand, but it's the sort of thing we're working on so that we can engage with the right stakeholders, ensure the buy-in of those who are already fans, and help inform those people who we believe would benefit from systems approaches and the types of things we offer. Final sub-bullet there, continuing to evolve our products and events to meet our current and future stakeholder needs. And obviously technical operations and our events committee are hugely active in these areas. But of course, we have products and events at chapter level and at sector level. The final bullet there about volunteering is attractive and rewarding. As I mentioned earlier, that's something to always keep in mind. Looking at how we can contribute and looking to avoid duplication by reading this out, definitely the opportunity is for chapters to make sure you've continued to be part of that conversation of evolving the model. Our corporate advisory board, as a former cab rep myself, making sure that your employees know about and get access to the Inkosi information that you have as a right to help them develop as systems people. And also as cab organisations, expressing your needs and what's important, what you're seeing in your community. And Gary and I joined the cab yesterday for quite a lively discussion about what can we do better together to get to where we all need to get to. Technical community, it's about working together, doing the stuff we really love to promote, develop and promote that intellectual capital at the heart of Inkosi. And then everyone, it's sort of why we're here. We're looking to create great stuff for ourselves, for current Inkosi stakeholders and for future ones. So in closing, the International Symposium, whether you're an old timer here or it's your first time, is a great chance to get engaged. We're all empowered. Don't just sit saying someone should. Why not think, well, can I make something happen? Shall I go and talk to someone now and raise that? Don't just go away saying, oh, I wish someone had said something about X or Y. Every question matters. You'd normally say there's no silly questions. Clearly in an Inkosi community there are some silly questions, but don't hold back from asking them anyway. Have a wonderful week. I don't need to tell you to enjoy yourselves. I know that's already been starting. And I've got all the social media tags at the bottom. Do everything you can to share what's going on for the benefit of friends and colleagues here and those who aren't here. And one particular reminder, the hashtag InKosiIS is the hashtag to put on it for the symposium content. So, little introduction from me. Welcome and thank you. And I'll hand back to Tina. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much, Alan. Now I'll invite Christine to give the admin report and share some key membership statistics with you all.
Good morning. As you know, most of you know, I'm Christine Kowalski, Operations Manager, located in San Diego. So this has given me a whole new perspective of life being here in Australia, because back home, it's still early or later afternoon, yesterday. So thank you for this opportunity. I have the privilege of building on the social network of telling you how many socially connected individuals, organizations there are within Inkosi. Moving along, membership, or influencers and users. As you know, we're located in various sectors, and we have the new CAB accounts, users within organizations that are CAB members. We're currently close to 15,000 overall, and as you can see there, I put up 3 years worth of membership numbers. So you can see that the Americas and the EMEA sector are kind of holding consistent. But Asia Oceania, which is where we are right now, has seen phenomenal growth, and I really want to congratulate you. It's 50% over the last few years, so you should really be recognized for that achievement and how appropriate to be here. CAB Limited, since we just started this in 2015, we've obviously seen a tremendous growth in that as it's become familiarized with the CAB reps, letting their organizations know. We've seen a great usage. So this means Inkosi's outreach influence is growing. The demographics, as we know, we're divided into chapters, and currently in 58 countries. There really is no difference in these demographics, but it's always good to refresh. And of course, what is a slideshow without a bar graph or something? This is just a picture of our overall different types of memberships, regular, senior, student, etc. Overall, we are usually made up of individual members, all the sectors. That is the greatest portion. The red being the CAB Limited users. Someday, the Asia Oceania is going to be up there. And of course, we have corporate members, corporate and academic. This was a landmark year reaching 100 members, and as you can see in this list, we have some applications that are pending. They are not even in those numbers as of yet. And if I recall correctly, there is a new academic institution that is come forth and may be part of that pending number very soon as well, I think after I left the Office for Travel. So the CAB is to be commended on their growth. We're always trying to make ourselves relevant to keep that growth alive for both individuals, corporate, and academic institutions. Publications, if you were here on Friday, you would have attended the strategy session, and you would know that publications is a new initiative that we're really trying to get in there and get our influence. We do currently have agreements with Wiley that has grown since 2008. They initially just published the SE Journal, and we have become more of a agreement of partnership where we receive royalties from publications that we allow them to print on our behalf. The journal, or excuse me, the handbook, which was turned over in 2015, has been one of their best sellers. We expect to hit about 4,000 for this year being sold. We're currently at about 2,000, and we've made about close to 30,000 just so far. We have translations, because if we're global, we have to be able to be read in other countries, so that's an important key, one that we're all trying to improve upon. And Wiley is going about and looking for areas. We try and advise them on where the greater heart of engineers are located. But we currently have the Chinese, Korean, and German, which are fully translated and are available. Some of them are in the Inkosi store with a link to where you can find them. If not, they will be. We're working to make that happen. There's a discussion underway with the publisher for a French translation. The Spanish chapter is working on a translation, and Italian is in process. This year, there was also a agreement, a joint publication with MIT, Inkosi, and PMI. This book came out, Integrating Program Management and Systems Engineering, in April. There's an agreement where we can buy at a reduced rate and offer them for sale in our store. We have since sold about 88 books, and they're still on demand, and we also receive a percentage of the Wiley sales. So it's beneficial revenue sharing there. In our partnership, when we did reach the new agreement in 2012, We are beginning to see, or not beginning, we have been seeing income from subscription sales of Insight, SE Journal, and the IS Proceedings. As of right now, we've received about $50,000 for this year. And in case you don't know how to reach us, info@inkosi.org or helpdesk@inkosi.org will get any one of us. These are all the players. They're all fairly standard people that you've seen on this list before, but we're all here to help you. And on a personal note, I'm going to get teary-eyed. Buddy, who always came to the office with me for the past 9 years, is no longer with me. So my duet is now a solo. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christine. Next, I'd like to invite Art to come up and talk about our strategic objectives. Thanks so much, Art. Good job.
Okay, I'm going to talk about the objectives and the concept of value streams. Only got 10 minutes, so it goes quickly. This is just a reminder of the 7 objectives. Alan put those up earlier. They have actually evolved a little bit over time. Some of the wording, for example, in the competency one has matured a little bit, but they're reasonably stable, and that's important because if your objectives keep changing every year, you really have no guidance as to where you're headed. We've made progress in all of them, in some cases very substantial progress, but one of the interesting questions is understanding what we're actually trying to achieve. So these are all qualitative, well, most of them are qualitative statements. So, for example, alliance, we amplify our ability to achieve our mission through diverse alliances. It's hard to be able to say, have we actually achieved that? Because what we said we wanted to do is by IW 2020 over a baseline of IW 2015, achieve all of these objectives. So what you have to do is, of course, establish some measures so that you can, and targets so you can actually do that. So we've made good progress, but as a practical matter, we have almost all just qualitative statements about what we're trying to achieve. And that's a weakness that we have that we're working on, but it's actually fairly hard. These are complex things. Some of the issues are, what do you want to use for measures? And do we actually have data that we can support for it? Because as we know, if you pick the wrong measures, that can drive the wrong behavior. And if you don't have the data to back up the measures, then they're actually not very helpful to you. I picked one of these, which is the one I'm in charge of, which is the growth objective, excuse me, which is really the result of all the others. So if we do the right things with forums and products and alliances, et cetera, the organization will grow as a practical matter. If we don't do the right things, no matter what we do, we're not going to grow. You saw some, there's trying to be a refinement of what it is that we have. So we have the number of people. I used people rather than individuals because individual is a type of member. We have student members, we have individual members, and now as a result of sort of a relabeling of our CAB limited accounts, we have the concept of associate members. And if you look across there, what you see is on that line, 42% of our target, which sounds very impressive, but if you kind of peel it apart, you realize there's actually some challenges there. So looking across, what you see is that at the individual member level, we are essentially flat over the last couple of years. So we are growing in terms of how we count members, but we're not growing in terms of the number of individual members. That's a worry, right? Our student membership has grown, but we really need to do a revitalization of the student divisions to really ratchet that up, and that's an activity that the Academic Council is focused on. And the whole concept of associate member is new, so we went from 0 to 4336. I have heard as recently as about 20 minutes ago that what we've effectively done is just take people that we didn't know by name and know by name, so we need to be careful how we do our counting so we don't overstate that. Nevertheless, it is important to be able to recognize that we now have ways to reach out and touch all of those people that we did not previously. If you look at the target, it doesn't differentiate between the three categories. And I think what I will do is try to establish a breakdown of that, because we should be establishing, I think, an objective or a target around growth in individual members, which has been flat for a while. And that becomes a challenge for what we do in the other objectives in order to be able to achieve that. The growth in corporate members has been substantial in academia, a little bit less substantial in industry, and actually a significant loss in government. And that's a result of the fact, largely, that the Department of Defense went from a number of, the U.S. Department of Defense went from a number of individual accounts to a single organization that represents essentially the Department of Defense. So they took advantage of the way in which we allowed them to recategorize themselves, and that reduced our revenue and also reduced our count. But nevertheless, we're still making progress. We said we also wanted to diversify with healthcare, mobility, and energy sectors, and the question was, how does one even count that? What's in the energy sector? What's in the healthcare center? Because you have some companies that are kind of conglomerates, et cetera. So we're about to actually go through and, I will say, properly categorize each of the cab companies in terms of the industry sectors they represent, using some standard classification systems that they self-announce. So all companies, basically through a series of codes, explain what their business is, and we will use that to categorize them. The other thing that's not captured directly by counts is the amount of money we have. And one of the motivations for growing the organization is impact, simply by having a bigger footprint. The other is to raise revenue so that we can in fact do more, right? So one of the ways to measure that you have more money is to look at your income, and there's a variety of different ways. I've chosen to look at expenses because we typically establish budgets that we underspend, and sometimes we do things in, shall we say, unusual ways. So what we're doing, what I'd like to do is to think of it as working from the baseline of expenses. So if, like from universities, we usually talk about our expenses, not our budgets, because that's an indication of the actual activity we have. And if we go back to a baseline, if the IW is 2015, you'd look at the expenses through 2014. About 1.3 million or so in IW 15 baseline, and this last year was about 1.8. So we have been growing in terms of expenses, but to go from that to doubling in the next 3 years of budget will be quite a challenge and will require a lot of work. So that one's a big ask. Let me switch real briefly. I'm running a little bit long, so I'm going to just go quickly to indicate what we're trying to do with value streams is attack that issue of how do we grow our revenue more than anything, and treat essentially as product lines, value streams, profit loss centers. There's any number of vocabulary that you might be used to. Try to identify key places in our organization, our activities, where we can in fact try to really manage them like a business. This was introduced, this concept was really talked a lot about by John Thomas a number of years ago, but it's taken the organization, as Inkosi normally does, several years to sort of internalize it and figure out what it means. So that's what we're going to be doing, and what we are doing is early on focusing on 4, it may go to be a little bit more, but 4 early value streams where the notion is there's somebody who's a manager or a set of managers. We're keeping books around it, because we don't even keep our books around the idea of tracking profit loss centers, because that hasn't been part of our business model. We're going to change how we do our bookkeeping so that in fact we can understand better how much money are we investing in certification, what are our expenses, what are our What is our income? Are we making money or not? And of course, that requires some conversation about what you include, what you don't include, what the strategies would be to grow it, et cetera. So we have 4 there: certification events, publication, and professional development. That we are going to focus on initially because we think those are actually a major opportunity for us. And if you look at more mature organizations, their sources of income are usually something like 1/3 on membership, and the rest are these kinds of things. They held events that make money, they sell publications, et cetera. You look at Inkosi, it's like 80–90% of our revenue comes from membership. It's an immature model, and if we can grow these, we can really have a much more cash available to us to support all the various activities that we're trying to do. So, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Art. There's a lot of great information there, and I know in this short session it's hard to dive in, so please take some time to come up and talk to Art about each of the things he was discussing. Now I'd like to invite Carrie, and as she's coming up, let's say, as Christine said, congratulations on the amazing growth in the Asia-Oceania sector.
If you were at the strategy session on Friday, you would have heard the majority of this. So apologies if it's a second time round, but then again, it might be reinforced more, or you could have questions that you can ask me after. So I'll just, we're giving you the highlights today of where we're at. So I'll just quickly go through this so that we don't waste any time. The problem space is that Inkosi started as a national entity, and the chapter structure, the membership dues, etc. And it's been in place from day dot, and it hasn't been changed. So we thought, does it need to change? At best, we need to review it. So the review of the chapter model to see if it supports a global network of 58 countries or more, and we need to look at, well, what does that mean from the helping chapters, the governance of it, our membership dues, etc. And this was also as a result of working, This is also a result of a number of strategy sessions and inputs from chapters about their memberships, if they can afford to restructure, are they getting enough to support their own chapters based on retaining a membership due. So we were looking at it, holistically from all those aspects. Now the team was put together. There's representatives, as you can see, from every sector here. But what is important to note that every one member on this team already holds a strong volunteer job in Inkosi. So they know how Inkosi currently operates, they know the issues, we've been listening also to the chapters, and so it's a strong team to say, well, what can we do about that? And it's taken a lot of time and effort, as you will see on this slide. From this slide, we've actually had a lot of feedback, from the chapters in strategy sessions, in surveys, in one-on-ones, in sector meetings, and it's been going now for just over 2 years. The formation of the task team was 18 months ago. So after having 2 strategy sessions and recognising we need to do something, the only way we can do it is put some effort in, dedicated to work this. If you look at the top of the timeline there are all the activities that have been involved at all the IWs and IS. If you look at what's at the bottom there, they're the actual work that we've been doing in between getting all the feedback from the chapters and those strategy sessions and our own game plan. I'd like to say that we are on track of where we plan to be at this point in time that we set 2 years ago, which doesn't sound impressive, but trust me, when you're volunteering, that's a minor miracle with everything else on our plates. So what we have here is that if I just go from left to right, we listened at a strategy session that was held in Seattle. And really that turned into discussion all about finances. We took that on board and thought, right, I need more fact than just that. So we put out some surveys where we actually asked for numbers. Funnily enough, we couldn't get a lot of the numbers. So we thought, right, we need to have another strategy session to see how bad or how strong this challenge was versus a lot of hot air. Okay, so we did that. We did another survey, and yes, this does have substance. We need to look at it in more detail. Went away, and then we planned our approach, and we put a timeline together, what our outputs, exact. But we wanted to actually frame our activities so that we didn't just deviate all over the place. So we actually identified through another strategy session what would be our key underlying principles for this work. And I'll show them in a minute. So we then worked that out, and then we went forward on a number of recommendations. Now, what you don't see here is that at every board meeting, which is 4 or 5 of those a year, and at some special meetings, we had identified outputs to actually get agreement or get recalibrated to move forward. So it wasn't just done in isolation of the 6 individuals that were on the team. And so that was quite good. And we do have a very strong team, and I should have acknowledged that earlier. And Megan has built an amazing model, and she's also the Inkosi treasurer. We won't actually be able to show you the financial model, it's still in work, but it is pages and pages of worksheets. Okay, and she's had strong input from Andy and Ian over here, and I'll explain where that goes in detail. And myself, I've been pulling it together and looking at the chapter governance, and I'm the one that asks the stupid questions on the spreadsheet. But it's all worked well. And then we've had Ivan, who is the UK president, hovering in the background, not active, but reading every communication and giving us his feedback. So he's sort of been, in some ways, a little bit of our sanity check. So these were the key underlying principles that were identified in Edinburgh. They come in those areas of transparency, parity, risk and reward, accountability, responsibility, and esprit de corps. So just working through, I won't actually read these out. I will just put these up and give you a minute to read. I do like that you use the one, think globally, coordinate regionally, and act locally. So yes, you heard. So thank you. Pardon? Yeah. So we used these principles that when we were looking at our recommendations and we were going forward, both from a governance and a financial model, that if we couldn't map the principles, and it doesn't have to be every principle to every recommendation, but every principle had to be addressed, or if we had a recommendation that didn't map to the principle, we went and revisited that. So we used that as one of our guidance. Now, here is the actual recommendation summary. This is where I will spend the time on at this session. Is that we have, at the moment, 5 governance, and these will evolve into updating policies or creating new policies, etc. But the 5 are, and just briefly, is that there's a instruction and guidance on how do you actually set up a chapter, operate a chapter, what are the best practices, how you would have a executive body, hold elections. We will be requesting bank accounts now to be held at the chapter level. And if the chapter is struggling, how we would support that to grow it or merge it / retire it into another chapter and get the benefit of working with a larger chapter. So we also then, to do a lot of this stuff, we also need to know, how active, how healthy is the chapter? So we're looking at chapter reporting. We're going to keep it simple. We've all got day jobs. We're talking about a 1-page template to be filled in twice a year. That's the level we're talking about from the chapter reporting. We've actually, in doing this work, and myself being a sector director, and then listening to like Ian in outreach, etc., we've recognised that there are some really great chapters out there that are assisting other chapters. So they're not just looking at their own chapter. So we're calling, and we're going to create a new award that will be come into play next year, and it'll be what we call it the Good Neighbour Award. So it's one chapter supporting another chapter. We're still fine-tuning that, but that will be along the lines of potentially up to one award per sector. And there'll be some criteria around it, etc. Do not think that this is replacing or in competition with any of the Circle Awards, bronze, silver, gold. No, it is going to be much simpler than that, and it's purely on collaboration. And I will give you an example that happens in my sector. Singapore is a lovely chapter, but it's tiny, okay? And it needs help. So what we do is, in Australia, we share with them now our newsletters. We actually look at anyone travelling, we'll share our events. We're actually now looking to actually do virtual tours with them. Similar now with India and China, Beijing, we're actually sharing material across the sectors, helping them find speakers if there's an event being held there. So things like that. So we're doing things above and beyond just looking after our own chapter. So that's the sort of thing we've recognised. Then 4 and 5, they're there mainly to support what I'll put up next on the financial models, is that if a chapter has a financial hardship of some sort and comes to their sector director for some assistance, of course, before we can see what we can support, we want to know, well, what have you been doing? And then can we offer support? Was it smart what you're doing, or do you need to be recalibrated? So that's hence the need to have access, if we need to, your financial records for that chapter, and membership statistics. That is not membership data on the individuals. We're just talking about numbers, etc., so that what's in the Inkosi database matches the numbers that are in your chapter database, and it's reconciled appropriately. Look at the financial side now. This is where the trick comes into it. Most chapters, unless they run their own events, their revenue tends to be from retaining a portion of the membership fee. And at the moment, it's typically, if you're a regular member, along the lines of $30 US per person. It does vary for the MOAs, and it does vary if you're a developing country. But it is a set amount. So in some cases, that is good enough. In other cases, the larger the chapter is, the more administration they have to do, and it may or may need some additional support. Do recognise, though, the larger the chapter is in MOA and the more work they have to do, it's actually more work for Inkosi Central as well. It is not less, which was a misunderstanding that we discovered during the course of this activity. So we're looking at a different way of doing that membership due of what is given to Inkosi Central for the greater good and use of across Inkosi, and what would be retained by the chapter. Now, in doing that, we've actually created a number of models, and there's going to be 3 new parameters. There will be the purchasing parity power. So every chapter will be allocated to a particular band. Now, we are doing that based on 3 bands, and we're working out what that means. So as an example, if you're in the US sort of base parity, you'd be a 1.0 PPP. If you were considered an area that was financially in a different band, it might be that you have a 25% discount on the membership fee. If you're at the lower band, it might be a 50% discount on the fee. Those are all parameters, though, that we are working with to see what is the right breakdown. Now, what I'm saying working with is, we don't want to break and send Inkosi down the tubes. We're working for the greater good of its members, chapters, and Inkosi. So we have, again, thanks to Christine providing a lot of information, and Megan working the burning the midnight candle, have gone back over 5 years worth of data and actually all of our scenarios we redo for across the 5 years to see what the impact is on, based on her historical finances. The other thing is that we are looking at the exchange rate. At the moment, the burden of exchange rate fluctuations is with the chapter. That will still stay the same, but one way of minimising that is we're looking at reconciling twice a year instead of once a year. Just drops that risk a little bit. And the exchange rate will be at the same of reconciliation. Then the third one is along the lines of, instead of getting a fixed amount like $30, $20, whatever it is, it will be a percentage, but there will be 3 bands. Now, does that mean, is it 18%, 20% and 22% depending on criteria? Is it 20%, 25%, 30%? We are still working that out. So if you put that combination now of parity bands, extra reconciliation, exchange rate and percentage, we're seeing to actually improve the situation for the chapters at the same time it being a viable model for Inkosi overall. Now, after you've done all that, you get to number F2, and you may find that a very small chapter, I will again, on my Singapore colleagues who are not here at the moment, when you do all that and based on percentage, etc., their amount might be quite trivial. So what we're saying here that depending on the certain circumstances, there will be a guaranteed minimal amount. It might be $500, it might be $1,000. That's what we have to work out. But you don't want to, which happened a couple of years ago for a couple of the chapters, where exchange rates went all over the place, the world went crazy, and we owed money. We had memberships, and instead of getting something back with the exchange rate, we actually got nothing and owed a couple of $100. Like, that was crazy. It happened to us. So the other one is that the F3 is just clarifying that a lot of the MOA chapters sometimes have an additional fee on top of the Inkosi one because they do certain things, they belong to other organisations, etc. That's just saying that all I've described maths-wise excludes that additional amount, okay? That's local, do what you like with it. It's not to do with the Inkosi itself. The member fee change notification period. We also had a situation a few years ago where we put the membership fees up, but we all work across the world at different fiscal years and different legal reads of knowing in advance. So that's along the lines, making sure we get that right. I think it's 12 or 18 months. I just need to check with Germany. I think they're the longest one. I know most countries it's 6 to 12 months. So it'll be at least 12 months notification. And then time-wise, right. And then the last one on the F5, after we do all this, this model will not be perfect. It will not, it will handle majority, but there could be the odd chapter. And that F5 is saying, if after all of this there's still an issue, raise it case by case, one-on-one, and we'll see what we can and can't do. Okay. And F6 is along the lines of, because we want more people to attend our events, whether they're international or regional, sector-based, and sometimes the financial burden is tough, every sector director has an extra line item in there to see what they can do to support these activities. What that means is, we've had this huge financial model, membership due model, which we will be discussing for up to 2 hours today in the Inkosi board meeting. And we have some policies. Some will be updated, and there's a few new ones there. That's the mapping. So we've done storyboards for all those policies. So that we can actually intent in the latter half of this year, before the year out, is to actually have the policies all drafted with the changes and being circulated for review. So we'll be walking through all the storyboards today at the board meeting. And the way forward, there we go. We're presenting, this is a big milestone for us at this symposium. Assuming we're not too far off the mark, we will adjust accordingly, finalise the model in the next month or so, and then actually putting it in place from the policies and putting out a comms program so that everyone understands the changes, what it means, when they're going to take effect, etc. Thank you.
So a lot of times when we work on strategy and we think at a high level, the principles of fairness, it's easy, but when you have to roll up your sleeves and get into the numbers and think of every exception, it can be very difficult. So I'd just like to ask the members of the task team if you could just raise your hands and we'll give you a round of applause. Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to invite Bill up to talk about the IT report. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here. And again, congratulations to Kerry's team for two things today. Not only membership growth in Kerry's sector, but also a lot of progress in dealing with a very important topic. So we're here to give you a quick update on where we are with IT. For those of you who are familiar with what's been going on in the IT organization, you'll know a lot of this already, but I just wanted to restate. The basic infrastructure that you see when you connect to Inkosi.org is actually three separate pieces that are designed to interact with each other and collaborate to provide a good set of resources. Member management is where you as an individual or as a CAB member or a CAB associate, I'm not quite sure what the term is these days, should be attaching yourself to the information that's available. The membership lets you log in, lets you identify your affiliation, the organization with which you are related, the chapters that you belong to, those kinds of factors, and lets you find out information about others in your chapter, for example, from within your membership area. And member management controls your access to other information around the rest of the system. In general, that access is common to all members, but there are some small variations depending upon the features that we offer to our overall audience, whether you're a non-member of Inkosi, in which case you can look at all of our website and all of our web resources, an individual member, in which case you get access to all of our internal resources and the opportunity to collaborate in activities, or the CAB Limited or Associate membership, which lets you get access to information, but doesn't provide you with all of the collaboration functionality that individual direct members have access to. So the website is the public face, and we are in the process of doing some work to update and redesign that website, which will come up in the course of the second half of this year, to make it even more friendly, even easier to find your way around and access the information that we have. And that's publicly available to everybody. And then Connect is a separate piece of the system again, accessed from the website, logged in through the same member management, but it is the place where we have got collaboration information, working group activities, administrative activities, and things for you to be helped. One of those things we've put into that space recently is the new Inkosi store. This is actually structurally built within Connect, so it looks and feels like Connect, but it's accessible for anyone who wishes to buy products from Inkosi, and that includes non-members of Inkosi who'd like to access our products. And we're building up now a greater portfolio of the products that are in there. Just one comment I'd like to make. If you go there and think you're going to acquire a product from Inkosi, and you see that little message, being an Inkosi member has its benefits, that's a hint to you that you haven't logged in. And if you log in, you'll find perhaps that that same thing you're looking at that says $25 US is now actually free to you as a member of the Inkosi, and other factors like that. So if you see that message when you go and look at the store, be aware of the fact that it's a clue to you that you haven't logged in and you're just being seen as a non-member. We've got some challenges that we're still working on, and over the last 2 years we've been trying to find solutions to resolving some of the inaccuracies of the information we have, organizing that information so that it's more easily accessible, more readily presented for the purposes that we need it, because the membership information is a key to all of the other things we can do within the organization. It covers your access to information, but it also, for example, relates to certification. Who is this person? Do we know about these people? So it's very critical, and we've had some challenges there, and we're continuing to work through those challenges, try to provide some solutions, and we'll be putting some special effort into that as we go on through the year. On Connect, it's not familiar to everybody, the way it's organized, the way the information is there, but there is help information. So you can go and have a look at that, find out tutorials there and see what to do. And if you find anything that isn't the way it should be, then we have an issue tracking feature built into Connect. Under the help item in that Connect site, I'd encourage you to go there, take a look at the feature tracking. There's a tracking list that says this is something somebody else has already noticed. That's fine, we've tracked it. If it's not something somebody else has already noticed, please put in your own submission. It's just a click on the plus sign and fill in what it is that you found was unsatisfactory, and we'll address that and deal with it. We're trying to get this as effective as possible, but there's still a way to go. The team that works on this is very small. In fact, the team that works on this is really the administrative team that Christine highlighted earlier on today. That's where all the work really is done. There's a small group of us who pay attention to what the content is, identify problems, come up with strategies to fix those problems. But I would like to see us add some more staff in this area. As has been repeatedly said today, we're a volunteer organization. And volunteering to look after this from a strategy point of view with just one person is a challenge. And so I would encourage anyone who feels they would like to join the activities here to talk to me about the possibilities of becoming an assistant director within this area. And as we go on forward, it's a continuing journey. It isn't a solo quest. It applies to all of us. So I really, really look forward to your input to help guide where we go, suggest ways that we can improve upon what we have, make it more effective for everyone's needs across the whole area. We have the resources here, for example, to host the websites of any chapter who would like to come and do that. So rather than hosting your website separately, we have the resources to make that possible. And we've done so for a number of chapters, and we have discussions going on with several others right now as to moving them into this place. We've put in place resources for events coming up. So you'll see the European activity coming up. I forget what the term is exactly. What's the European workshop called? It's a workshop. EMEA workshop coming up in September. And so there's a site there that supports that activity, and so on. We're putting up facilities for those purposes. And as we carry on, so we're working on dealing with the various things it takes to make the Inkosi system effective. If you've got any more thoughts on this, obviously find me during the course of the few days here, but we have an afternoon meeting on Wednesday. For those of you who have time on Wednesday afternoon, come and find me upstairs in City Room 2 and give me your input. I'll be sharing some further points about the strategy and where we're going, but look forward to anyone who has the time to come along and give me your opinions and help as we move on forward. So thank you very much. I'll pass it back to Tina.
Thanks, Bill. Come on up, Mike, to talk about technical operations. And as he's coming up, I think you'll see all these things are coming together. The investments we need to make in IT to enhance the experience for all of our members comes through our reworking of the value streams that Art discussed earlier. So please, let's welcome Mike.
Good morning. As you probably know, I'm Mike Celentano, or Celentano in Italian. I'm the technical director, and I'm here to give you a quick briefing on what's going on in Tech Ops. It'll be probably 5 minutes of 10 minutes worth of material. I'm going to talk about what is Tech Ops, what are the working groups, what are some of the initiatives and objectives, and also product development as well. So what is Tech Ops? You're probably think you know, and I know that some of the people in my group think they know, but when I review this with them, they said, oh, I didn't know that. Basically, we lead and coordinate and manage and support technical activities in Inkosi. And what are technical activities? They basically include sharing best practices, making system engineering products, and doing technical collaborations. So we initiate activities from the bottom up in working groups, and also initiate activities from the top down in initiatives and objectives. Initiatives and objectives tend to be cross-cutting, requiring domains and also application, and enablers and working groups and chapters all to work together, whereas working groups are more topic-focused. Our TechOps organization is made up of about 12 governance leaders, volunteers that have fixed terms over 2 or 3 years. Of course, we have over 40 working group chairs that are part of TechOps and about 300 active members. So it's quite a big group. One of our most dedicated leaders is coming to the end of his term, and I want to recognize him. That is Eric Herzog. Please welcome me and join me in welcoming, congratulating him for 3 years of service. If you see him, please shake his hand and thank him for all the service that he's given us. The events like this one and the IW are in a strong part made up by the person in his role. That does bring another item up, and that is I am looking for candidates to replace his role, and it's a very fulfilling and long-term commitment. If you know anybody who might be interested in that, do let me know, and I'd be happy to take candidates. Well, as I mentioned before, I'd like to, we have about 40 working groups. I'd like to tell you a little bit more about them. You know, we contribute and to all of these collaborations and this kind of thing. We continue to encourage members to form working groups if they're interested in common interests. And those are in new domains, new enablers. We're happy to introduce a number that are emerging and new. You probably already know about oil and gas, the PMSE integration, SE quality management is up and coming. We have some people interested in software-intensive systems and configuration management, next generation. We continue to encourage them, and we welcome them and try to facilitate those groups getting together and sharing best practices and making work product. You know, sometimes the working group activities do wane. Special interests sometimes move on to other topics, and we do eventually retire working groups. But we continue to try to improve the process. Some of the things that we're working on right now is something called working group leadership orientation. So whenever there's a new leader in the working groups now, we try to get together with them, go over all of the resources that are available to them, and help to onboard them. We're improving the product development process and putting together some working group guidelines. Some more on initiatives and objectives. TechOps is currently the leader of 2 of the objectives that were mentioned before. One is the products or impactful products. The other is transformation. And I'm the champion of the impactful products objective right now, and I have a project manager that's helping me out, Marie. I couldn't do it without him. And Troy Peterson is the champion of the transformation. Of course, we support the other strategic objectives, and we have our ongoing initiatives and some new initiatives that come and go. We have the standards, the MBSC, and now export compliance that Ken is playing a very strong leadership role in. A little bit more about impactful products. What we have done in the last, I would say, year or so is we've created a framework for product development, and we've initiated a product registry, and we have a committee now that has representation from different parts of the organization. We now more formally get involved proactively with plans and products that are being developed so that we can track our work and actually measure ourselves and how we're supporting them. We put some configuration management in place, and we're updating policies and procedures to support product development. Also, thanks to Bill, now that the Inkosi store is improved, we really can actually start linking to products more easily and make the bookstore kind of our one-stop shopping for all of our products. We're starting to measure our key performance indicators, and in this objective, some of the emerging and initial key performance indicators are telling us that we actually are doing pretty good in terms of accesses. It's tending to grow quite a bit, and it's kind of on track for doubling the amount of accesses that we have to our products. One of the indicators that needs a little more attention is citations. That has to do with trying to ground our products in the impactfulness from the standpoint of, are they actually of quality? Do people consider them to be useful? So we're still working on that metric, but we know that we need to spend some more information on that. And we have some other things that we're trying to measure as well. And as Art had mentioned before, this is a bit of a journey in terms of measuring our objectives and trying to know when we are done. A little bit more on the transformation objective. We have, thanks to Troy Peterson, a number of new efforts regarding events and collaborations on transformation. There's a number of products that are coming out to help organizations with transformation to a model-based discipline. And there's a number of products that were developed really that are tools in order to facilitate the objectives goals as well. So there's a lot of activity going on in this area where soon we should be having some more publicly available content for organizations to help transform themselves into a model-based discipline. A bit more on export compliance with Ken Zamrowski in the lead. We've recently come to realize that as we are growing, so too is, our exposure to regulations, to proprietary situations, and information control. So, there are some cases where countries are banned in terms of exchanging products. And so this is the kind of thing that we're trying to get ahead of, and we're going to try to develop guidelines that are going to be given to authors and reviewers, and eventually have a set of guidance that is going to help us keep in compliance and control distribution in an orderly manner. So lastly, I'd like to talk briefly on product development. As I mentioned before, we have lots of working groups, and what we've done in 2017 is we've measured all of the plans that they have for different technical activities. We have about over 100 of them in our product registry, and now we are more actively in Tech Ops being involved, getting ourselves involved in that whole lifecycle management of product development. Thanks to the Impactful Products Committee, we have an ability to help people with plans, help them with the reviews, get IP straightened out, also branding and distribution as well. So we have lots of new and emerging products that I'm proud to announce today. We have a number of them. I'm not going to say them all. You can see them here. Of course, there's a big pipeline behind it of other things coming. And I'm very proud of the work that our members have done. This, of course, isn't all just from Tech Ops, but as I mentioned before, Tech Ops includes everyone who's working on technical activities. So a number of these are collaborations. A number of them are working groups as well. So I really want to thank all of our volunteer workforce. They've done a fantastic job, and they continue, and some of you are doing that as well, to make products that are going to help us be more impactful in systems engineering at large. So thanks for your time today.
Thank you so much, Mike. Now I'd like to invite up Courtney to talk about certification. Thank you.
All right, y'all, last time I was here, summertime last year, the IS, I talked a little bit about my inspiration from Harry Potter and how that could help us revamp the certification program. This time I was inspired by a book. I actually am giving another presentation here at the conference unrelated to certification. It's part of the SE 101. I'm talking about requirements. And the title of this book just kind of broke my brain. I didn't quite understand it, and I read the book and just had this aha moment of understanding how requirements tell us what we can do and what we need to do. And I'll describe that better when I do the 101 class. But the certification program presentations that I've given have typically focused on what the certification program does for you and what it can do for individuals and organizations and how it benefits Inkosi. And I ran across this book, and it's about what you can't do. And this book was not a criticism of grandmothers. It was about how great they are, and it gave examples like they can't cook chocolate chip cookies without letting someone have a sample. And so I'm going to present to you what certification can't do. It can't make someone more qualified. Gary Rodler and I were emailing about what we'd like to capture of use cases and success stories of Inkosi certification. And we were trying to be real careful to explain that certification doesn't make someone a better systems engineer. It confirms that they are a good systems engineer. And Gary, it's been very helpful to me since then that you said it's like a yardstick. It doesn't make you taller. And so certification works with these qualified engineers. It doesn't make them more qualified. Similarly, if you have someone who is claiming to be a systems engineer, they cannot use certification to hide the fact that they're not actually a systems engineer. And so it cannot make someone taller. It cannot change someone's height. Certification cannot make your customer value systems engineering. And this is something that we sometimes try to solve everything with our one solution. We say certification is great, we're going to get our folks certified, and then our customer's going to care about systems engineering. Well, we got to scaffold these things. So the customer cares about systems engineering first, they recognize Inkosi exists, and then they appreciate certification. So it's something we have to build on. Finally, that's a word you like to hear, Tina. We can't let people believe that systems engineering is limited to one country or one domain. And I say this with Ray Henschel in my line of sight here, because Australia is a country that has been embracing Inkosi's certification program, and they have partnered with the organizations here in Australia to customize certification for their Inkosi members and for their candidates. And this is something that we've seen across the certification program, is that we are being appreciated globally and across multiple domains. And we're receiving feedback from our SEPs who say, you know, when I first got certified, I was working defense, aerospace. I've switched industries, and I want to bring certification into my industry. How can we do that? And they're coming back and they're saying, how can I get involved with tech ops? How can I, well, they don't know what it's called, but they say, how can I get involved with mapping these things? So unfortunately, certification is not going to let people believe that systems engineering is just a defense and aerospace thing. So that's what certification can't do. I'd love to talk to you guys more about what certification can do for you.
Thanks so much, Courtney. I'd like to invite Ian to come up, and as Ian's coming up, he's going to be using an example that you've heard a couple times about the integrating PM and SE. I'll also be giving the SE 101 talk on SE and program portfolio and program management, so it should be great. Please, let's welcome Ian Gibson, our Director for Outreach.
Good morning. So, no man is an island. If we had a million members, and I'll leave Gary with that thought, 1 million members, that's a good number, we could do our own thing, because who would care? But we don't. So we have to work with other people to get things done. Now, it's an interesting quote, because we all know the first line, but it does continue. It is relevant to current UK politics. Sadly. But a quote I quite like from a friend of mine who can't be here today is this one. None of us is as value-adding as all of us working together. Outreach is about collaboration, about getting things done we couldn't otherwise do without some support from friends. So what is outreach? Well, it's about, if this builds, raising awareness, letting people know that system engineering exists, that Inkosi exists, about collaborating with other people, and of course, at one end of it, formal alliances. But also, getting out there, delivering system engineering material to people, letting people know it exists. It's about social media, and as we said last year, it's social media, not anti-social media. About just being sociable. It doesn't have to include beer. I'm told gin and tonic's also very, very popular. But basically, people sell to people in sales, and it's the same thing. We're all human. And of course, some of us are superhuman. We have some ambassadors out there who do a fantastic job because they do their normal thing, and also they get out there and really help. So why do we do this? We do this to make more impact, to achieve things that we couldn't do by ourselves, to spread appreciation of system engineering and systems thinking, build our reputation, and ultimately get more people, get more members, because if we do all these things, we should see growth. Now, as mentioned before, there's a book. It's a good book. It's my own personal copy. If you look closely, you'll actually see some Post-it notes sticking out. And this has been a really good example of an alliance working really well, because we did it with ourselves, PMI, and MIT. We had a good MOU for overall enabling the whole thing, and then a particular statement of work which was nice, focused, and targeted. A clear statement of intent, clear timelines, and the whole thing worked really nicely because it was nicely well-defined. It wasn't some rambling, let's work together. It was a definite, we're doing this in this way, and now it's all done. And as you know, available in all good bookshops. So, principles of alliances. As Alan said before, clear alignment between ourselves and the other organisation. So they have to be the right kind of people. There needs to be tangible purpose. So as with the book, we have to have a good idea of what we want to do. And there has to be something that we want to produce that has clear benefits to come out the other side. We ideally want to have something come out which is exploitable and useful. So in that case, having a book is a thing you can clearly use. Ideally, want to get in some kind of win-win where things we do, things they do can be shared between us, and preferentially. And yeah, once again, it's about actually producing stuff that's of value to both parties. We have a number of MOUs currently in existence. These are just the ones to do with alliances. There are other ones for chapters and certification. And currently being progressed. There are 5 things we're currently doing. We're working with SAE about a variety of things to do with aerospace and automotive, where there are clearly techniques we know about that they're interested in as well. We're working with the IASE, with the IEEE, with particular subcommittees, with PDES, and also with AMI, although that one's taken a bit of a backseat because they've changed all their leadership, and we're getting to know each other again. And that is that.
Thank you so much, Ian. And now I'd like to invite up Bob, and followed by Ariella, for just a quick word on the key messages from the Corporate Advisory Board.
Morning, everybody. Just a few words about where the Corporate Advisory Board is at and what our activities have been most recently. First, you heard Christine say that the total membership now is well over 100. I probably about 107. It's a little depending upon if they paid their dues or not, and minor things like that. The numbers vary, but it's still growing quite rapidly. And about approximately 25% of the membership are academic organizations, and Ariella will tell you about the academic council and those activities. The key things that are going on in the CAB and that we've discussed this week are the new CAB fee structure, which has been put in place, which is a dues increase over 3 years, a little under 7% annualized. We've been warning the CAB members of this dues increase for 3 prior meetings now, and so they were all kind of, it did not come as a surprise to them, and there actually so far have been no negative ramifications. Nobody complaining, nobody dropping out. So that has gone pretty smoothly, and that includes the notion of the associate members. So we'll be, as you probably know, we'll be changing from the idea of CAB limited accounts to associate members, and linking associate membership to certain specific access requirements to Inkosi products, and linking it to incentives for associate members to become full members. So that should benefit the whole membership numbers as it goes forward. The CAB has identified 6 needs. This is kind of a major function of the CAB to identify to the rest of Inkosi especially, but not limited to tech ops, what CAB members feel their needs are. And so the 6 needs that we're working on right now are agile, systems of systems, the value proposition, and that value proposition thing means value proposition of CAB membership, value proposition of belonging to Inkosi, and value proposition of systems engineering in general. So it kind of encompasses all of the ways in which you can interpret that notion of value proposition. That was the 3rd need. The 4th is integration of systems and software engineering, then model-based systems engineering, and lastly, professional development. So at the CAB meeting yesterday, we talked about the progress that has been made on all of those, on satisfying all of those 6 needs, and there's very good progress going on all fronts. So that, I'm very happy to report that need satisfaction process is working well. Also, some new needs arose at the meeting. One dealing with semantic foundations of systems engineering. I guess the best example of what that means is if you say V and V, everybody should understand what the first V and the second V stand for. If it's validation and verification, or verification and validation, and what those words mean. And there's a lot of variation in the systems engineering community about what terms mean. And so we're probably going to start a project to identify those semantic foundations. I'm sorry. Okay. Almost finished. Sorry. The last one is building meta models for model-based systems engineering. Although the models themselves are in place, the meta models are inadequate, and we'll probably be looking at that. Those are the key needs, and I will leave it at that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bob, for that insight into the CAB. And now we'll just get a quick word from our Director for Academic Matters, Ariella Sofer.
I'll try to be quick. Thank you. Academic Council is looking at, has 2 major focuses. One is the academic side, that is faculty and students, and the other is advancing the systems approach, which Alan talked about. And the major focus in that is systems engineering education, understanding for every engineer. That's something that Art has started. We're continuing work on that through alliances with ASEE, which is the American Society of engineering education, and hopefully there's also an international society of engineering and education that we will start to be active in. We have also made inroads with ABIT, which is the American, it's Accreditation Board of Education. It's the American one, but they accredit programs internationally. The definition of systems design has changed and includes many words that are systems engineering in flavor, such as needs, risk, comparing risks, and what else I don't remember. I'm sorry? Like trade-offs and so forth. So every engineer will have to actually prove that he or she has the ability to do systems design in a systems way. And hopefully that will be approved. Some major hurdles have been passed. In terms of faculty development, we're actually looking at 2 new activities. One is a new faculty colloquium, which actually gives lectures to faculty about how to start an academic career and face all the hurdles that a new faculty faces. And also we're looking at changes in the systems engineering curriculum that may be needed in the face of changing environment, changing world, including data analytics and cybersecurity and agile and so forth. What should the systems engineer really know? Finally, and this is becoming more important, we'd like to promote students divisions. I'm looking at changing the policies. Actually, Inkosi doesn't have written policies for student divisions, so maybe we can do that. David Mason, I don't know if he's here, was tremendous in establishing student divisions. We have anywhere between 10 to 20. The number is not really clear right now. I'd like to see it be 30 at least in the next 3 years ago, so we're working to advance that. So I'll be short.
Thank you so much. And I'd just like to point out that the accomplishments that we've shared with you all today are, of course, not of the 3 of us up here on the stage. They're yours. So thank you so much for all that you do for Inkosi. And please also try to take back to your groups and to your teams all the things that we've shared with you, all the ways that we're trying to increase membership and highlight the value of membership in Inkosi. Please share that within your groups. And please have a wonderful time at the International Symposium. Welcome to Adelaide.